Hi there, so welcome to this little drawing tutorial. We're going to be painting the painted ladies of San Francisco, these famous houses near Alamo Square, I believe. Um, yeah, so there's lots of beautiful Victorian Edwardian buildings in San Francisco. We visited a few years ago, and yeah, there's lots of beautiful buildings. So for this drawing, I'm going to be concentrating on obviously this is a sort of line and wash urban sketching type technique. I'm using a fude nib fountain pen, which will give you a really big, nice fat line. And I'm going to be using some quite expressive and quite rough sort of mark making techniques. I'm not going to be subtle with this one. This is a fast, loose urban sketch. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. So here I'm starting with this big foreground, this big bush, and I'm going to be adding in some of the people, not all of the people, and I'm also going to be thinking about how I do the city behind in the foreground, because I think that's quite in the very background, because I think that's quite nice. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that here I'm actually using the holding the fountain pen towards the end, and that's because I don't want to get too fiddly. I want to be a bit more sort of gestural with the way that I'm creating these shapes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just go sort of double time with this sketching, because I don't. It's actually weirdly quite a long sketch, and I don't think you necessarily need to see every single element of it. The important thing to remember if you're going to be doing this is just sort of zone out the areas, just look at the ratio of the various components and go, well, that tree is about a quarter of the way across the page, and that's sort of roughly about the same height as this bit, and just compare areas. And remember, it doesn't have to be right. There's maybe 7 houses in this picture, or however many there is. Nobody will care if you miss one off. Nobody cares if you if you miss a car out or do too many cars. The only person who really you can please is yourself. So there's not many times in life you can just do something exclusively for yourself, and it doesn't matter what the consequences are. If you set fire to the paper, roll it up, stick it up your nose, I don't think anybody really minds. I've started on the left-hand side, and I'm vaguely making my way across. Technically, that's not the right thing to do, really. From a tactical point of view, it's better to really start from the outside and work in, and then you're less likely to get sort of details out of proportion and things like that. But we all have our own little foibles. It's just the way I work sometimes. Now, I've purposely chosen to include some cars in this because I think they add scale. And I also like cars. I like signs. I like downpipes, aerials. I like the stuff that a lot of artists tend to miss out of pictures. I like telegraph poles. Things like that. It all adds to the story, I think. I'm sketching these houses in pretty quickly, and I'm really not being too bothered about sort of accuracy. Sometimes it's nice to do super accurate drawings, but other times when I'm more in the mood for a bit of a play, I'll just roughly sketch these in. You see, I'm counting actually sort of counting the bushes here and thinking, where do I put them? But I think I give it in the end and just vaguely sketch them in. So one of the things about these houses is, there's a lot of repeating patterns in the windows. And if you enjoy doing windows, by all means, sketch every single one of them in, every single step. But if you're a bit like me, then there comes a point when maybe it's a sort of slight attention deficit thing, where you just get to the point where you just, enough's enough and you want to get on with some painting. So don't feel you have to show every single one. I mean, you could paint the odd one in, or you could just not sketch them in and then put a dab of paint in there to show that there's a window. There's lots of different ways of representing stuff. And then because there is an awful lot of verticals and horizontals in these buildings, there's quite a lot of details in these buildings. They are not glass boxes, and they're not some kind of thatched cottage, with very organic shapes. There's lots of verticals and horizontals, so at least if you can capture some of that detail, it will help tell the story. But also there's going to be some colour in these. There's going to be a lot of colour added. We were lucky enough must be about 8 years ago now to do a road trip around the States, and we did about 5 weeks. We flew into Portland, Oregon, and went all the way down the west coast, and then headed inland around I think we ended up in Flagstaff and the Grand Canyon, and then across right across the country to New Orleans, and then down to Miami, and then flew home from Miami. And we saw an awful lot of America, an awful lot of real beautiful places. And I have to say the people are just so friendly, and just, curious. And, we met some really, really cool people. And, did a little bit of off-roading in the hire car across the old Route 66 gravel roads. Got it stuck in the desert in Death Valley, and that poor hire car. They often say that nothing's as good off-road as a hire car, and I can definitely say that's true. But yeah, we had a wonderful trip. I've got a lot of stories for that trip, but maybe this is not the time for travel tales. That could be a whole podcast. We've got some really good ones. So yeah, as I said, this is actually quite a detailed sketch in a way, even though it's been done very quickly and quite sort of roughly. Okay, so you can see here most of the line work's down. I'm using the other side of the fountain pen now, the big wide side of the nib, and I'm adding in some details of these bushes to try and pull them forward a little bit away from the houses. Otherwise just to create some sort of separation between these buildings, I'm using a slightly thicker line that helps to describe the overall outside sort of shape. I think I am running out of ink here, and I obviously nip off and add some more. Okay, so I think we're away again. Now, a lot of these buildings have these sort of overhangs in, and I'm trying to describe that a little bit with the ink work. Again, as I've said in previous videos, if you're doing line and wash stuff and you're using fountain pens and you're using ink rather than sketching with pencil or fine liners even, there's a balance to be had between line work and colour. Now, everyone is going to see that balance in a different sort of place. For some reason, for some people, they really want the painting to sing and then the line work to be really subtle in the background. Other people, they like really big chunky lines and then just apply a tint almost. And for some people whose line work is really sort of cool and iconic, if you look at the artist Brian Ramsey, he's got this fantastic style of drawing, and it would be a real shame to cover it in colour almost. So what he does is he just selects certain parts of his pictures and he'll colour those up, but it leaves this amazing sort of spidery lines. His line work is really wonderful. So here, obviously, we've got this very social little square, and I'm adding in some of the people details. Sketching figures is something that a lot of people are really quite afraid of. And to be honest, I used to be the same. It's not something that I've got a huge amount of confidence in, but the more I do it and the more I do sort of abstract figures, the more I realise that they don't have to be well rendered at all, or accurately rendered, I should say, because there's a big difference between being well rendered and accurately rendered. It doesn't matter if you do little boxes or little carrots, or you can do some really simple little gestural shapes, and it'll still read as people. In fact, sometimes the more abstract, the better. So the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that the buildings have got a lot smaller and the city behind us got a lot bigger. Now, I've made the decision to sort of, again, slightly caricature this. I want the city to be bigger, because I want to have a bit of fun with some of the levels. Now, as opposed to the foreground that I've used a really thick fountain pen, I've actually sketched in the city with a grey fine liner. So the lines for the city will be far less prominent. And hopefully that will help knock it back and push it really into the far background. So really, I don't think I'm that far off painting this. So here we go. So what I've done is I've wet the sky, as you can see. I'm going to go and just really simply add in some of the... that's fun. I literally look like my daughter painting. So that's, some old French ultramarine. And again, I'm trying to be really loose with this and just like dot it in and just have a bit of a play with it, really. And then what I'm doing with this cityscape is, while it's wet, I'm actually going to lay in just some very rough shapes. And I don't mind I'm not trying to do this as like a single wash. I actually want it to be like dabs and blobs, because I want them to be sort of separate areas. Yeah, this is pretty abstract. I like it. I think one of the mistakes people make, and I've certainly been guilty of this in the past, is we all have such distinct styles of drawing and painting and mark making. Is when you do a tutorial like this, if you do a sketch long, or if you download it and have a go, that's really the point of it. So I hope you do. You look at it and you go, that doesn't actually look like Doug's, but that's not the point. The point is, it should look like your work, but you should be trying these techniques and learning it in your language, in your style. The whole point is that it's an opportunity to have a go at a sketch, have a go at a drawing, and it shouldn't look like mine. It should look like yours. And then hopefully some of those techniques you can keep chipping away at. Maybe it'll become a regular thing. Maybe over the space of a few years you'll keep sketching and you'll keep drawing, and then eventually, you'll have your own style will be so innate that your own style will get polished, and you'll get happy, or you'll just be happy with the way you do it. I think being happy with your style is really not just about developing it. I think it's about getting used to it. I've spent a long time as an artist, since I really got back into my drawing, because I've been creating art all my life, but it's really only in the last 4 or 5 years I've really got back into creating art on a regular basis. And it's something I do daily, and I actually think that I spend a lot of time worrying about my own style. How do I develop my own style? How do I get it to look like this? How do I get it to look like that? And actually, by doing, I've almost got to the point where I've stopped thinking about it, because I just know what it is. That doesn't mean I can't try new techniques. That doesn't mean I don't do tutorials where I'll draw like other people. But I think it's almost a case of like becoming comfortable in your own skin, in a way. So what I'm doing here is, I'm dabbing in some colours, and I'm not really even choosing to represent. I'm using the houses as a rough guide, but I'm not being too precious. Some of these colours aren't even in the reference image. Okay, so I hope you don't mind, but I am just going to speed up. I'm off to get that hair dried. Speed this up a tiny bit. Okay, so now I've dried that off a little bit, and the sky's all dry. I can go back in and add a little bit more detail into the background. Now the city here is he's like the sort of ghost behind this image. It almost looks like sort of rural America, and then you have this sort of foreboding city behind. So what I'm doing is I'm just sketching in some dark areas, just to try and suggest some of the structure, really. Again, you don't have to do it this way. You can interpret the reference any way you want, really. I just wanted to do something really quite sketchy here. Adding a little bit more shadow detail in. Okay, so at some point here, once that's dry, I think there's some sort of final details that are going to go in around the houses. But yeah, first it's going to be these trees, and then I'm going to put some colour in the foreground as well. So what I'm doing here with the green is I'm actually I'm adding yellow in, and then I'm dabbing blue in, and that's going to give you a little bit more contrast and a little bit more variation in those colours. Again, splashing a bit of water in. And these people in the foreground are colour blobs, really. They're just like colour dots. You don't have to paint every part of the scene. You know, you can leave an awful lot of elements unpainted, and I think that gives it a nice sort of fresh feel. Obviously, I've lost my bottle here, and I'm putting in a few little bits in the foreground. It's a shame I could have left that, I think. I think the final bit then often I think these kind of very loose and rough sketches, I think they work very well, but often when I look at them towards the end of the drawing, I'll go in and I'll firm up some of the elements, if you know what I mean. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. Is I'm looking at the background and I'm going, I'm going to add in some more straight lines, some details, and then the chances are I'll go in and do the same in the foreground and put the windows in the buildings, things like that. So I don't have to do this. It's not necessary. But it is fun. So rather than having the windows as just white boxes, you know, some windows will be white, some have blinds behind them, so they will appear white. I'm going to be colouring in some of those with the grey fine liner, and I'm going to be putting in some of the details of a little bit of the shadows, you know, things like that. I'm obviously going back in with the black food pen here as well, and using that to create some areas of like light and dark. Adding a bit of shadow to the trees. So here you could draw every single window in. You could do, you know, one or two. Some of them I'm doing grey, some of them I'm doing black. And then I'm adding in a little bit of shadow just in the foreground with the fine liner there. So there we go. So the last bit to do here is just to add in a little signature. Now these really loose drawings are really good examples of what I call like play. You know, I'm always banging on about this. You know, we learn so much from play. We'll always learn more from play than study. And if you know what I mean. So actually giving yourself the sort of, you know, the time and allowing yourself to just loosen up and just splash some paint around it's always going to be fun, isn't it? So yeah, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a go at this. I mean, whether it's using the style or whether it's this specific, you know, reference image, but yeah, do have a play and let me know how you get on. Send me some examples. Have a look at my website. There's in the links below. I've got some original artwork for sale. There's loads going on. Have a look downstairs in the description, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I'm still zooming around all over the place here with this one. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Like and subscribe and all that jazz helps the site. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye bye. Have a great day.